Alright, hi everyone. So we're looking at lab 7. We're going into a new lab today. Today we're going to talk all about shading, and something that relates to shading is also rendering. So we're going to talk about that as well. I do have here on Moodle a working file. So it's basically that one there, lab 7 work file. So let's just download that. Once you've downloaded it, we want to put that into a project folder. So I'll cover how to create project folders as well for those of you who might have missed it. It's really good to know how to create your project folders. You're going to be working on your projects. Ideally, when you work on different lab assignments, you need a separate projects as well. So I'm going to talk about that here. Basically, this video is all about setting up. In the next video, we'll talk about the shading part. Okay. So to set up a new project, you go to File. We'll go inside Project window here, right? And we'll just click New. Clicking New will allow us to specify the name of our new project. So I will call this Shading, and I'll just say Shading Demo. You need to know where to point it. So what you can do is you can just say I want to put all my project folders in here. I have my piano model project folder here and nothing else. So I can copy this link here from Windows directory, and back here in Maya, inside location, I'll just paste it in. Once you're happy with that, click Accept. Sweet. Let's go back here, and you'll see that there is a folder being created for you. It's called Shading Demo and contains all of your projects. This is basically the project folder for Shading Demo. Right. Okay, going back to Chrome, I've already downloaded my Lab 7 work file. Let's go see where it is. This is inside here. I'm going to cut it, Control X, and I'll go back to my Shading Demo project folder, and I will paste it inside my Scenes folder in there. Sweet. Everything's good. Going back to Maya, we need to make sure that we are pointing to the right project. So what I'll do to ensure that it is pointed correctly, I'll just go to File, Set Project again. And I want to select the Shading Demo folder. That project folder is what we're looking for. Right? So select that and click Set. Sweet. To test out whether everything's working fine, just press Ctrl O to open, and you'll see that it will point to Scenes, and you'll see that your Lab 7 work file is there. Click Open. Don't save the previous scene, and it's going to show that there will be errors, blah blah blah. Don't bother about it, just click OK. Basically, there are some stuff in the file, the scene file. Perhaps there's shaders from an old renderer that is still there, but don't worry, just click OK. Alright, so by clicking here, because that was blank earlier, not sure what I was viewing, but just click on any of the panel layouts here, and you can see that that's your scene. We're going to talk about the scene a bit here, okay? So in here, right, so we're going to talk about the scene a bit here. You'll see that we get something new here. You see that this thing is grayed out, so there's grays here. Well, basically that is your resolution gauge showing there, right? So you can switch it on and off. So I decide to switch it off. I'll show you all about it later. Right now we're viewing things in wireframe mode, so I'm going to hit 5 on my keyboard so that shaded display is on. There's a grid here, so let's just get rid of it, hide it by clicking grid there. Alright, let's analyze what we have so far. You'll see that the scene consists of this plane, which is basically a cyclorama, just like what you get in a real studio. It's basically a wall and a floor which has that curvy edge that connects them. Alright? Similar like what you see in a studio, you can set this up here in Maya. It also has two walls, right and left here. There's also a ball here sitting there, right? it looks black at the moment. There's a reason for that, and we're gonna look at each one of these materials. We also see a light here. This is an area light on the right. There's a light at the top. There's an area light here. Alright, let's look at the properties of each one of these. I'm going to select the ball and go inside Attribute Editor. You'll see at the very end here, there's a tab called Chrome Sphere. This ball actually has a material to it. There's a shader, and it's basically an Arnold surface shader, an AI standard surface shader that has been applied to this ball. You'll see later when we're going to render this ball. Let's select this area light. We'll see that this area light has a color to it as well. It's blue, but it also has been plugged with a texture node, a ramp texture node, and it looks blue as you can see here. Let's select the top area light here. This area light has also been plugged. I can tell by looking at this arrow here, and it's been plugged with a ramp texture node, which has something of a white to gray gradient going on. So it's going to influence the look of our light here. Alright, and finally we have this last area light to the left, and it looks a bit brownish, and if you look inside the node that's plugged to it, there is a ramp texture node. It looks a bit brownish to give you off that warm color. Sweet. Alright. So, what's the purpose of these lights? Well, without the lights, you're not going to be able to see the result of your render. How do you look at your renders? This is how we do it. At the top here, there's this thing called Arnold. So Arnold, you're going to go inside Arnold Renderview. I'm going to click that. We'll see that there's nothing here. Basically, everything's black. Our render will not show unless we hit the play button here. Okay, so I'm gonna hit the play button here, and let's see what we get. Once we hit play button, you'll see that the word rendering shows up here. It will actually render each one of these buckets here. It's hard to tell from the video, but if you do it on your PC, you can tell that the picture, the rendered picture, is starting to get clearer and sharper, and all the noise, all the dots here are starting to go away. What's happening is that your computer is starting to render the image bit by bit, bucket by bucket, square by square. And when the counter here shows up, right now it says 24 seconds. Means that it doesn't show rendering at all. Our render has completely finished, and this is the image that we produce. Let's analyze the render a bit. We can see that on the right here, it looks a bit bluish, a bit cool, and that was the effect of this area light here on your right. Right? That gave off a blue color because of the bluish gradient we have on the ramp texture node here. On the left here it looks very warm, it looks brownish in fact. And if you look at here, that was the effect of the area light that has been plugged with a ramp texture node that looks a bit brownish in gradient here. Whereas at the very top here, we see a hint of a light going on, and that was produced by this area light that has that kind of ramp texture. So it's like a pretty basic grayscale white to gray ramp going on there. So that was all the three illuminations that we get. Okay, that's all about rendering. Okay, I'm going to show you something. If I were to kind of mess around with my viewport, for instance, I'm going to select the ball here and I'm going to press F. Immediately you'll see inside Arnold Renderview that it will update what we see here. So what's going on? What basically is going on is that the rendering will start again if you were to move your viewport even a little bit. So even if I scroll out, it will actually update here. So whatever you do in the viewport will update here as long as the play button has been enabled. if you like, and what happens when it's rendering is your computer is going to, the processing will be eaten up. The CPU time or the GPU, depending on your setting, will get eaten up, and it will actually cause your computer or your Maya or Windows for that matter to kind of lag, freeze, or crash altogether. So a good idea when rendering is happened, and when you see the word rendering showing up here, is to just leave it to render and let all the buckets render. But if you want to interrupt the process at any point, you can actually hit stop here, which means you're going to stop the IPR. Once you stop, play will show up basically. So now if I were to move it around, it will not update in the Arnold render view here. So you got to be wary that, you know, play and stop basically does what it does. It actually plays and stops the render. Once you play, whenever you update, it will update the view that you see here in the viewport, okay? Depending on what camera you specify here. And it doesn't depend on what is showing here in Maya. Everything is depends, whatever shows in the render view depends on what camera you specify here. Right, as you can see, if I drop down here, there's no camera other than the perspective shape camera. I'm going to stop my render here for a while, and I'm going to analyze what we have in the outliner. So I'm going to open up my outliner, and I see that yes, there is a perspective camera, but at the same time, there is also a render cam here. But right now it is being grayed out. What that means is it's been hidden. And if it's hidden, it will not show up in the drop-down menu here. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to press H when I select the render cam. Pressing H unhides it. Now it shows up here. Alright, and if I drop down here, it doesn't show as well. The thing with Arnold render view, this window here needs to be closed, and you need to go to Arnold, render view. Right, so open up Arnold render view. It doesn't show up render cam shape. Hit play to render it out first. Only then, if you go back to the drop down menu, render cam shape shows up. Choose render cam shape, and then you can hit play again to render it out. Now you might ask, what is render cam shape? Why is it showing me this big ball? I'm going to stop the render here for a while, and we'll go back to our viewports. I see only the perspective view here. I don't see render cam shape. Now, how do I go to render cam shape? Up here inside panels in the viewport, you can actually change the camera from perspective here to render cam. You'll see that it will update down here from perspective to render cam. So I'll go to the top here, panels perspective, and choose render cam. Now what I'm seeing is how I see the ball from the view of render cam. Right, so this is what render cam shows, and that's why inside Arnold render view you see this huge ball. And if I were to zoom out a bit and hit play inside Arnold render view again, it will update my render. So there's a couple things to take there. That you can actually change what shows up in Arnold render view by choosing from the drop down menu here. Okay, other things will also include that how much gets to be shown here inside Arnold render view. Okay, what I'm going to talk about next is something a bit kind of related, so I'm going to stop the IPR first. Let's minimize this. As you can see here, I have my resolution gate on. I can enable that by clicking this icon here, resolution gate. It says 1024 by 1024. What does that mean? Well, this actually means the resolution that this image will be rendered in, and right now it is a square image, means that it's very square, 1024 across, 1024 vertical. All right, but what we're looking at here is not really a square image. How come? What I'm going to do now is I will select the render cam camera. To do that, you go to view, select camera. So the camera is selected. It is white here, as you can see. Inside attribute editor, go down and scroll down. You'll see this tab called display options. Expand that, and you'll see that there is this setting here that says overscan. Try to change the value behind 0.8. But see the size of it, the width of the like 2. Now we're starting to see square the boundaries of our render. So it is exactly a square image setting at 1024 by 1024. So basically, this option here, display options, the overscan actually controls how zoom in you're looking at the viewport. Right, so by changing this number to a higher value allows you to see the edges of your frame. So that's about looking, zooming in and out and seeing the edges of your frame. But what if your project requires for a different dimension? For instance, it's not 1024 by 1024. Right, in here, inside render settings, and you can get your render settings by clicking the icon with the gear here at the top. You'll see that if you scroll down inside common here, you'll see that right now it is set at a 1K square image of 1024 by 1024. You can actually change the aspect ratio or the resolution by going to the drop down presets here and choosing a different value. For instance, HD 720 gives you a 1280 by 720 resolution. Or maybe HD 540 will get you 960 by 540, which is basically the same aspect ratio of 16 by 9. Yeah, but let's go back to our 1K square, and 1K square gives you a 1024 by 1024 image. Okay, so that's about that. What I'm concerned is, look at our Arnold render view. How come it is still showing a square image? The way we can view the real size image is by going to window here. You'll see that right now our setting is set as real size. That explains why we're looking at it. It's not pixelated, it's not zoomed out. It is actually 100% one by one image that we're looking at depending on your display on your computer or laptop. To view it, all of it in the aspect ratio resolution that we talk about, you need to hit F on your keyboard, which means frame all. So if I choose this, you'll see that now we see it viewed in the 1024 by 1024 image. Although we're actually zooming out, a bit at 58%, and we're not looking at it at the exact resolution, real size of H here. Okay, if you get what I mean. So to view all of it, you need to press F. F and H. F and H. F gets it viewed in the 1024 resolution. Alright, although a bit zoom out. So that's basically it. I will give you another tip. If your computer is struggling with the rendering, you might want to, one, stop the IPR. That way I can move things around. That way I can change the color and all that, do all sorts of tweaks without actually updating Arnold Renderview. It can be a bit tough to do it if you are constantly rendering and constantly trying to, even moving that window is a bit laggy, and constantly trying to do that. It will actually lag your PC a lot. And what more if you were to change values here, dragging things and do all sorts of things. So do stop the IPR if you plan to drag things around and changing values on the right here in Attribute Editor. Another tip is you can also hit 4 in the viewport, and that gives you a wireframe display. This will actually lessen the processing that your computer needs to do when handling with this Maya file. The other thing is you can also change the resolution. So you can go to view here inside Arnold Renderview, test resolution, and change from 100% to maybe 50%. And if you will render this out, it will actually render, but it will give a resolution that is half of what you set. You see that this is 1024 by 1024. Now we're rendering at 516 by 516. So it's a bit lower res, but it gives you the image that you want, and it takes less time than rendering it at a full resolution. So those are some tips on how to set up doing this. I'm going to stop now. We'll continue in the next video where we'll talk about how we can create more shaders and have more than one balls by duplicating it and assigning it with other materials. So see you in the next video. Bye.